Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and what I wanted to do is just talk about a few more JavaScript tricks because you can never have enough. Just things that make life a little bit easier. So first, I just want to I'll talk a little bit more about like combining arrays and combining objects. So let's say I have two arrays. So here we're going to say I have array 1. So let's actually say const array 1 equals 1, 2, 3, and then const array 2 equals 4, 5, 6, and I would like to combine these into one array. Here's how you do it. I would just do const array 3 equals, and then I use the spread operator. So first I'll spread the first array. So what the spread operator does is that instead of me putting the array in the array, it basically brings all those elements up to the first level. So it's just going to be 1, 2, 3. It's basically if I did 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to add the second array. Do the same thing. Array 2. And right there I've combined both arrays. Console.log array 3. Save. I run that. And there you go. See, it's all one big array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very cool. Okay. Now, other fun trick. What if I did this? Okay. Now I have all these extra 5s, but I really just want it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want to get rid of the non-unique items. Okay, what I can do is there's a data type called a set. So a set in most programming languages just is an array with only unique items. So there's a function now built in, really it's like a type built in to JavaScript that should allow you to create a set. So you say new set, and then you can just pass in an array. So it'll take this array and then put in an array with only unique items. So let's see here. Let's hit save. First, I just want to console log array 2 for a moment, just so we can see what the result was. Make sure that it all worked. Okay, and see, we have set 4, 5, 6. I got rid of the 2 extra 5s. And now I can go back and combine them. Save. And there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So whenever you need a unique array. Now the only thing to keep in mind is that, see, they didn't really create like a true array. It created an object with only unique items. So if you want to make sure that it's actually an array, you're going to want to do something like this. You'll use the spread operator, so that way it turns into an array. So then we just highlight all this. And that. Okay, now if I console log array 2 again, now array 2 should actually be array instead of an object without the curly braces, as you see here. So save. And there you go, see? And now I have an array with only unique items. Okay, so these are some neat tricks that, you know, oftentimes you might end up with a situation where you really just want the unique stuff and you don't want to, then you sit in there, you're thinking you have to filter out all this stuff. Okay. Cool. So there's that. Okay, then there's the whole idea, what if I have, well, first let's combine objects. So let's see here, const, okay, object 1 equals 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. And then I'll just copy and, just copy and paste that. Control C. 2. And then let's do it this way. Keep that 3 there for a moment. 2, 2, 3, 3. No, actually, no. For 4 Oh, you can tell I just woke up. 5 5. There you go. And I intentionally wanted to put the overlap of 3 there. So if I wanted to combine these two objects, it'd be basically the same idea. I would do const object 3, okay, and then do this. I would do dot 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 the spread operator for object 1. And the reason why you do the spread operator is because if I just put object 1, it's going to put the object inside of an object. I don't want that. I want those properties 1, 2, and 3 to become the properties of object 3. So what this does, it bubbles up all those properties up to the top level. Dot dot object 2. Okay, and let's see what happens. Let's console log it. Sol.log object 3. And see, it combined them into one array. And see, I didn't have to eliminate that second 3 since they were identical. It just merges them. Basically what happens is at first it assigns this 3, so it doesn't necessarily merge them. It assigns this version of the 3 property, and then this one overrides it. So technically, if this one was 4, because that one gets assigned second, it would override it. So like if I did this, see, 3 becomes 4, because this one gets assigned the second time, so that overrides the first time. Neat. Now watch what happens if I took off the spread operator and just did that. Okay. See, I end up with 2 objects. Object 1, which is this. See, I have an object within an object. So it's an object with 2 properties, which are smaller objects, which is not what I wanted. But by doing the spread operator, I have it all in one nice object. Very neat. Okay, so that's cool. Okay, now here's the thing. You might have an object. No, we'll leave it that. That's good. Let's say we have an array. Okay. Const my array. And what happens is that for whatever reason you have like null values in it. So you have like 5, null, 6, null, 7, null, 7. Now I could use set, and that would get rid of all the nulls because they're all identical. But it would also get rid of my one of my 7s, and I want both 7s. Okay, so how could I basically reduce that into only to the actual values and get rid of any null values from my array? Okay, because you might run into this situation, especially when you're working with like online and you're pulling with code from APIs, and you end up with like null records, and you don't want to iterate over those null records. What you can just do is just use the filter array. So just say, hey, filtered array. Let's do const equals my array dot filter. We'll just say each one is an item. Okay, and we just return, you know, whether item equals true. Okay, because what's going to happen is going to check the item and see if it evaluates the true. And again, null evaluates the false. Undefined, the only issue is 0 is going to resolve as false as well. So if you wanted to keep zeros, that you may have to do like an or. So we'll do something like a or item equals 0. That way you get to keep the zeros. So now let's console log that filtered array and just make sure that it took out all our nulls. Const filtered array equals oh, no. console.log equals filtered array. Let's see what we get. Okay, I'll get an empty array. That didn't quite work out the way I wanted to. Let's see here. Okay, let's just do it that way. Return. I'll just do it this way. If item, I think I just need to do this. Return. I don't even need to do that. Just Boolean item. Okay, so then it'll just basically convert that item into a Boolean statement. I think that would do the trick. There we go. So it gets rid of all the nulls. Because what the Boolean function does, it just takes whatever's inside of it and turns it into a Boolean. So it'll take 5 and say, okay, is this true or false? Okay, 5 is true, null is false, 6 is true. And again, filter's only going to keep the items that are true and give me only the items that returned true. And I can check for anything, so whatever Boolean I put in here, but only the items that return true survive the filter. Very useful function. Cool. Now, moving on, a couple more things. Let's just talk about like default values. Okay, so let's say I want to do, let's say my value const my value equals 5, 6. And then I want to say this value const this value equals my value. Okay. And then we'll console log this values. Okay. Pretty straightforward. This is just going to console log 6. Okay, now if I were to say do this, or let's just do this. Let me just comment that out. That might throw an error, but let's give it a shot. Yeah, threw an error. My value is not defined. But let's say I did undefined. Save. Okay, it's going to end up giving undefined. And that's a possibility. For example, when you do a lot of pulling from APIs, if it doesn't find information, it's just going to assign undefined, or that variable will be undefined, and you may not want that. So you may want a default value. So I could do something like this, or 6. Okay, let's just make sure that works. And you see it works. I'm not sure why the slash is there. Let me see if I can see why that's there. Oh well. But anyways, oh, I see. It's just for some reason the slash is just hanging out there. Okay. So basically, what happens is that if this value is undefined, it's then gonna, or isn't something that like that evaluates a true. It'll turn into this. Now that's the problem. So like for example, if I assign 0 and I wanted it to be 0, there is a chance that it'll still assign 6. So let's give it a shot, see if it still does that. Okay, and that time it works. There are certain situations where that might not work exactly the way you'd want it, which is why in the future they're coming out with this thing, which would do the same thing, except that it won't work in certain situations that you might actually want to assign the thing you defined here. It's only if it's null or undefined. But for now, this works. Okay, so that's the default value. So basically, again, if this is, oh wait, no, that did do it. I wanted to assign 0 and it gave me 6. That's why this thing is going to exist. Because if I wanted to assign 0, if I want to assign 0, I don't want the 6 to be there. But see, 0 evaluated as false, triggering the default value. So this operator in the future, I don't think this is supposed to be implemented this year, 2020, the JavaScript. Let's see if Node magically has it working now. Yep, not yet. If you use TypeScript, I think it works. But the idea is that would do the same thing, but then it would take the 0, because it won't treat the 0 as a false value. So I always forget what that's called. I think it's called the, And there's no nullish coalescence. That's the one with the items. And then I think that's sort of the null operator or something like that. Okay, but you'll be able to use that. But that's one way to do a default value with the or symbol. Now, if you're creating a function, so let's say const myfunc equals, and then we have a parameter. I can actually give a default value to my parameter. So maybe I want someone to put an integer, but I want to make sure that if they forget to put a parameter, that it does something. So we'll say a default of 5. And then I just define my function. I can just say return parameter. Okay. Watch what happens. Console.log my func. First we'll do it with 4. 6, 7, and then we'll leave one that's blank. So the first time, since I passed in 4 as parameter, it used 4 and returned parameter, because parameter is going to equal 4 because I gave it 1. Then it's 6, then it's 7, so we got the 4, 6, 7. But in the last one, I never gave it a parameter. So since I defined the default value, it just said parameter's 5. And now it returned 5. So that's pretty useful. So that way you can make sure that your function always works. You never have a chance someone screws up and leaves a null value. If that's something that's useful for that particular function. But it's a good trick to know and good thing to be aware of. But I think here we got a good handful of good JavaScript tricks. Hopefully this will help improve your JavaScript code. Of course, there's always a ternary operator. So let me just go over that real quick. It's not really necessarily a trick, more than a feature that you should know. But one of the benefits of the ternary operator is you don't have to worry about scope with the variable. So you might do something like this, like I have a variable that I want to define. Sorry for the sirens. Okay. And let's do this. So I want to say const, well, I'll say if my value equals 5, and if my value, well, if my value is greater than 5, const new value equals true. Else const new value equals false. And then I want to console log new value. Now you might already notice what the problem is here. Okay, so this is going to throw me an error. Let's just confirm that it does. Yep. Because even though, see, you're like, new value is not defined, I thought I defined new value right here. Okay, and it only happens once, so I'm not re-declaring it because either this happens or this happens. The thing is that you have block scoping with constant let. Okay, so then what happens is when this gets declared, the minute we exit those curly brackets, it no longer exists. So when I try to console log it, it doesn't work. So I can't declare that variable in there. So that means I have to either go over here and do let new value ahead of time, which is kind of sloppy looking, or I can change this to var, but var is like kind of old school and not the best way of doing things, but let's just do var and make sure that it does work. Okay, because var is not block scoped. So in that case, it does work if I use var. But, you know, it's always good practice to kind of keep your scope limited. It makes your code more predictable. So without having to pre-declare the variable as a let ahead of time, because I'm only assigning it once, so I'd rather it be a const. Without having to use the old school var, how can I pull this off? Well, let me comment this out, and we'll do the same thing using the ternary operator. The ternary operator helps you get over that scoping issue. So now I can do const new value, okay, equals, I put my expression, my value's greater than 5, okay, and then I use a ternary operator, which means I put a question mark, which means it's going to evaluate this as either true or false, and then do something depending which one. So then it would just be true if it's true, and then the colon means anything after the colon is what happens if it's false. So it's the same thing. So if my value is greater than 5, it'll sign true. If it's false, it'll sign false. But now I can actually label it a const, not have to worry about var, workarounds with var and let, and not have to worry about the scoping issue because there's no curly brackets. So since there's no curly brackets, I don't have any weird block scoping problems. So now if I use it, see, it works because false, because right now 5 is not greater than 5, so it's going to sign false. That works. Okay, so the ternary operator, if you're having issues with block scoping and having to write sloppy code because of block scoping, ternary operator is here for you. Okay, so hopefully that helped you be aware of some tricks and some useful tools. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.